You're watching Inside Hollywood. And now, here's Vinny.
This evening, we have a guest originally from Long Island. I love my Long Island people. She is a writer, director, filmmaker, and she is known recently for Waitlist, A Lovish Story. We present to you tonight the wonderful Debra Markowitz. How are you, dear?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Indie Rights. Here we go, Indie Rights for, there you go.
You have one
Don't
of
mind.
those.
You got to know somebody. And I know no one. But anyway, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm excited to talk to you. And, I'm hearing a lot about this wait list. But before we get started with that, let's tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I started as the Nassau County Film Commissioner. It's a role that I created and ran for 33 years. It's pretty much gave me my start in film because I got to know a lot of filmmakers, mostly on the higher end. I worked on pretty much every television show that existed. And somewhere about 20 years ago, actually 29 years ago, I was approached by an organization wanting to start a film festival. So I then got involved with the Long Island International Film Expo, which then introduced me to a lot of independent filmmakers, which I got to see the other side of the spectrum. And about 14 years ago, I started casting for other people. Knew that I knew a lot of celebrities because of the work I did. And so somebody approached me and said, would you cast my movie? And I checked with the county, made sure I actually could do that. And they said, as long as it's your own time, you can do what you like. And I ended up casting a short film. Decided I had a blast, but I decided I wasn't going to do it again because between working full time and that full time on my time off, I just didn't think I could do it. 3 weeks later, I was approached by another filmmaker to cast a feature film. So I said, I'll read the script, but I'm not promising anything. And I read the script, and 10 pages in, I'm like, this is the best thing I ever read. So I ended up casting and producing that movie. And then after that, I kind of wanted to direct my own movie to see what made directors crazy. And now I know. So I did my first film, The Last Taxi Driver, which is actually on my YouTube channel now. And since then, we've probably worked on about 45 movies of ours and movies we were hired from for other people. So at this point, I left the film office about 6 years ago to go into movie making full time. And I love it, and I've never worked harder.
So it sounds like you caught the bug.
Yeah, it is a bug, and it's a disease that doesn't go away. So I am way busier now than I ever was, even when I was doing everything all at once, because it's very hard to say no to a job you like. You know, I can put that in. I can fit in another film, but we went through about 14 months. My husband, John Marine, and I were co-owners in Intention Films and Media. We figured there was 14 months where we did 2 features, about 5 short films, 1 television pilot, and then he acted in a couple of films besides our films. And after 14 months, we were so exhausted. It's like, okay, we need a break. I need to not do the thing I love for about 2 months, which is go on set, because we got to decompress. So, there is actually too much of a good thing, but at this point, we're in a good space. We're in post on 2 films, From the Embers, which is a feature, A Couple of Guys, which is a feature, and also we're promoting Waitlist, The Lovish Story, which just came out about a month ago and just landed on YouTube like the other day, which is kind of cool.
That's fantastic. My short film, Washington Avenue, is also on YouTube. I'm a big fan of, hey, listen, at the very least, one thing about YouTube is my love-hate relationship I have with it is very hard to grow. However, it's the biggest distributor in the world. So, try to take advantage of it. Now, tell us a little bit about Waitlist.
Well, Waitlist started out as a short film. It was going to be a one-day short film because there's a couple of actors I wanted to work with. And we had just bought a new Red camera. And whenever we buy a new piece of equipment, we do something for free or something very inexpensive. Make sure we know where all the bells and whistles are. And John, who is also our director of photography, needs to make sure everything works before anybody hires us. So I had been talking to Travis Brad, who's the lead in the movie. And I had just recently sent him for an audition for a commercial. And I said, do you have anything? Do you have any movie you want to do? And he's like, well, I don't really have anything written. And I said, all right, let me see what I can do. So I thought of him, and then I thought of Beck Fordyce, who I wanted to work with as well, and Lauren Murtha, who I've always wanted to work with. And I said, well, who would these people be to each other? And like, all right, I see this. I can see the younger man and the older woman kind of thing, and we can do this. And so we did it for one day. It was so much fun that by the end of the day, I realized I wanted to know what happened to all the characters. So I kind of locked myself in my office because when I'm writing something and I'm into it, the voices don't stop. I will literally wake up and go, because he said this, she said this, and I have to write it down or I just can't do anything else. So I'm locked in my office writing, and a few days later I said to John, do you realize I wrote a feature film in a week? He said, Debbie, we just shot on Friday. You wrote it in 4 days. And I have never, I'm a quick writer, but I have never done that before. So, then we were deciding, well, what do we do? Do it really inexpensively, keep it non-union, or do I try and bring him some names? And we finally decided, after I wrote it, I sent it to a couple of people who said, so I said, all right, well, let's, call up some celebrity friends. And I got Robert Clahessy and Abigail Hawk from Blue Bloods. And I got Kim Director from She's Gotta Have It and The Deuce. I also brought in Tara Westwood from The Grudge, Lucas Hassel from The Blacklist. And it's like, all right, we got a movie. So we just put it together, and it was probably the most fun I've had on set because they're all amazing people. So that was kind of a blast. But it's just a younger man who has always been in love with his childhood friend's mother. And as he's a young man, he's in his 20s, he finds out she's gotten divorced and he decides he's going to go for it. So it's a lot of fun. It's a rom-com. I wanted to do something very light because things have just been so dark lately. And I do a lot of dark drama, but I really want to do something that would just make people happy, or at least make me happy. So I wrote the movie for that.
And that's the key, they say write what you like, write what you know, right? It's a cliche, but you have to like it obviously before you can put it out to the world. Now, rom-coms I think are always a great genre to do. And in fact, I'm actually considering one myself. Now, you're making it sound very easy, Deborah, by the way. And it's not easy, guys out there, but
It's not easy.
let's see if we can give some of the guys and gals out there that are just starting out, or maybe they haven't put their foot in the water just yet, and they want to be a filmmaker. I guess a lot of the typical questions are, all right, well, how do you raise money and how do you find the talent? Can you address those in the best way possible for a newbie?
Well, there's two really difficult things in filmmaking. I mean, there's a lot of difficult things, but the first one is raising the money. My first couple of short films, I raised them. One was Indiegogo and one was Kickstarter, which is crowdfunding. It was hard work, but we raised all the money we needed. We got the projects done. We even had a little left over to do the festival circuit. But after that, I'm like, how many times can I ask people for money? So the third time, my third film, By Blood, I decided that let's just pay for it and let's do it ourselves. We'll ask for some favors because we do a lot of favors for other people. And we were able to get that done. For larger projects, the fundraising is almost ongoing. And what I decided is I actually just put the fundraising pages on my website. And then if I want to promote it, I'm not worrying about people taking out percentages or I have a certain time frame. I can take whatever's necessary to do that. But another thing I did when I started, because I run the Long Island International Film Expo, I used to watch the films, which I haven't done a long time now, but I remember we had a best cinematography category and 3 of the films were shot by the same cinematographer and everyone was completely different. Like, this is the same guy? And I'm going to work with him. So I contacted him. He had just gotten out of college. Mark Ryu, his name is. And he was so talented that, I spoke to him and he recommended a couple of people. Again, all out of college. So everybody was looking for experience. They did get paid, but they didn't get paid a lot. And it was so great that Mark shot my first 3 films. And he's actually shooting a couple of guys, which we just wrapped. It took us 9 years to finish that. And it takes them through ages, so it worked. But because raising money, we were going to do it as a 10-person Grand Illusions. We were going to do 3 seasons, 12 episodes each until we realized how much money that would be. All right, we're going to do a 12-episode limited series. Now I realized how much money that was going to be. So we finished 4 episodes, and I thought, I can't raise money for this for the rest of my life. So what we decided to do is I tossed out almost half of what I wrote. We kept the first half, or editing it down, and I rewrote the second half so we can do it as a feature, and I could finish it. So that's how we ended up doing that. But I brought in a couple of people as producers, knowing that I could pay them less and that they would get producer credit, which is another way to do it, is try to bring in producers. But I can tell people, if you're starting, bring in friends. Know that if it's terrible, you don't have to show anybody. It's probably going to be terrible if it's your first film and you have no experience. If you're going to actually raise money, then hire people who are way smarter than you are, because this way the movie will look good. But I find college students, especially really hungry, very talented college students, they want to get out there. They want to build up their reel, and that can be a really good resource for you. I'm also big on bartering because I cast. So if somebody did something for me and they need their movie cast, then I'm out there doing that for them. Or John Marine, my business partner and husband, he does sound. He's a shooter. He can gap. He can be an assistant director. He can be pretty much anything. So we use him a lot for, for wherever we need him in our films. And if he works with somebody else for next to nothing, they're going to work for us for next to nothing. So there's a lot of that. Building up collaborators is so important. Now, if you're just starting, the thing I can recommend is volunteer in the beginning, because if you don't know anything, nobody's going to want to pay you if you don't know anything. You have to learn what you're doing. And for example, I'm going to mention one of our crew members. He came on as a PA, and somebody on set, our lead actor, had said, can this kid, can he come in? And I'm really not a fan of people who don't know anything, because sometimes that's a lot more work, and sometimes they don't know set etiquette. And it can be disruptive if you have very tight deadlines. But he brought in Jack, I'll give you his name, and he was great. So, okay, so we'll bring him in on the next film. We made him production assistant. And he did something so simple, but yet it took really thinking out of the box for him to do this. And we had a 3-day film shoot, and one day we're cleaning up, getting ready, we finished the first day, and I find a big cooler. And I look at it and I realize he was going out getting coffee, and he decided to get what everybody liked without sending anything to me, so that everybody had what they wanted that day. Sorry, but that takes ingenuity. That takes thinking like, okay, I'm just going to do this because this will make life easier for people. So of course I paid him back. That was pretty amazing. And we went to a deli that didn't have a menu. He literally made up a menu and handed it to everybody. I'm like, okay, this kid, let's try him out. So we moved him up to grip, then key grip. He's now our key grip for all our shoots. We have him do sound sometimes. We trained him on sound. Everything he does, he sells at because he cares. So if you're going to work on a film set, you have to know not to talk too much. You have to know when you can ask questions and when not to ask questions, because it might be disrupted. And a lot of people intrinsically know that, but he just wants to learn everything. And because he's always got such a great attitude about it, it's like somebody got sick on one of our film shoots. And it wasn't Jack per se, but somebody else got sick. And we turned to our first AC and say, Dom, could you step in there? Because I know you know how to do sound. And he didn't even think twice. He said, I'm on it. And he filled in until our sound guy came back and we moved somebody else up to AC. So learn everything, learn everything you can on set, because that's going to help you get further. And if you decide to direct yourself, you know what everybody does. So it's going to make your job so much easier. And pretty much the crew I have right now, probably 6 to 8 of us that are very solid. We have our own shorthand on set. So we almost always get done early, because everybody just fills in where they can see where something's needed. So they go and they help, and that's tremendous. Now, when you get to union, that's a different story. Somebody can't pick up that light if that's not their job. Somebody can't move that if that's not their job. But, in the independent world, you can work with some really great people who all help each other out. And that is so important. So volunteer, learn to be of value. Don't complain. I'm not getting paid. Why am I doing this? Now, I always pay everybody anyway, even if they're nominal, but learn that's your experience. That's what you're going to take to your next job. And if you did a great job for me, I'm going to give you a phenomenal recommendation. And my guys get hired out all the time because I recommend them all the time because they're great. So you want to have a really good reputation. If you make a mistake, own up to it. Tell somebody. The last thing you want to do is throw somebody else under the bus, because you won't work. People won't trust you. We all make mistakes. We're all learning. If somebody comes up, okay, how can we fix it? And then you can know that this person's always going to be trustworthy. And that's really important.
I agree with everything you said, Deborah. I mean, my own experience too. I mean, and as you said, you see the ones that go above and beyond, and you didn't ask them to do certain things, and they do it. And then then you have to learn, because then there's some of the ones that just love to chat in a corner all day, and they're kind of neglecting their whatever their job might be. And so it's like you see the red flags, and you don't want to be mean, but then you may not call them next time. So if you're watching out there, make sure you may not get a fiery director that'll throw you off set, but you may not get hired for the next project. So definitely got to learn the etiquette.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Mark Ryu, who is shooting a couple of guys for us, my original DP. John shoots most of our things now, but because we started with Mark, we really wanted to have, the continuity of his style and whatnot. And he's worked on sets before where I just see him going and doing everything himself. And I'm like, yeah, he doesn't really trust these kids, I can tell. But I have such a great crew right now that when we did Couple of Guys, the first time I ever saw him just sit back. It's like, okay, you can set up the camera, and you could see they all knew what they were doing. I think maybe once the whole set, somebody had to say, hey, quiet down a little bit. But they are always professional. I never have a problem to recommend them. Now, I've had nice people who are good at what they do. But we have to tell people all day long, guys, it's not a party. You want to be friendly, but it's not a party. And if, like you said, you can try and maintain a nice relationship, but probably you're not going to be on the set again. And I'm not going to feel comfortable referring, because my name means something to me. So people know if I prefer somebody, it's because I truly believe that they're great for the job. So yeah, you have to be very careful about making it not too festive an occasion when you're on set. We all love being on set, but it's work. At the end of the day, it's work.
And you have to. I'm the same way. I try to make it fun, make it happy, but at the same time, it's business. We got to make sure we're out of there. Time is tight. Things can happen. Problems happen all the time, and you think you're going to have an easy day, and it turns out to be a nightmare. So, well, now let's get into a couple quick questions. With what were some of your biggest challenges? In your own path as a filmmaker. What were some of your biggest challenges, and what were some of your happiest rewards?
Okay, well, one of my every film has a challenge, and the mark of a great director is you have to be flexible and you have to stay calm no matter what, because you're running the ship, and that's that. But the first big challenge on my very first movie, Last Taxi Driver, was the fact that it snowed and we had blizzards and it was a 95% outdoor shoot. So we had our location and we had to kind of move things around at the last minute. And like there was a scene where Robert Hester from Blue Bloods plays my last taxi driver, and there wasn't enough street for him to drive down because of the snow. So it's all right. Mark's going to sit in the car. He's going to drive this way. We're going to turn around. He's going to shoot the other way. So you look out the window, it looks like the street's longer. John had a truck packed with sand and salt and whatever. So, we can make sure cars got in and out. Because it started raining right after snowing and we couldn't have that continuity, my friend Regina was handling craft, and I was going to call her and say, can we eat earlier because it's supposed to stop in an hour? And by that call, she goes, food's already here. She sort of read my mind, and we ended up with actually a pretty good movie. Some other challenges we had just recently, we had a lot of challenges just recently. One of them was, I was working with an actress who had Down syndrome. And what I did was, it was just different. She's a dancer, she's a model. And so I met with her a couple of times via Zoom. And then I met her in person the day before. We went to the location. I had been hired for this job. And I sat there and I talked to her. She started crying. She said, well, this is what I do. She said, the first time I do something, I cry. The second time I start to get it. And the third time I nail it. Okay. And I spoke to her and I really got to know her a little bit. And then the first day on set, she started to cry. I'm like, Ava, what do you do the first time you do something? And she looked at me, she goes, I cry. That's right. So what do you do the second time? And then we were off and running, and she was amazing. I also do, like I tell people, these are the snacks she likes. Keep them if she gets tired, grab one. Just how we always have it ready. We made sure that it was a very light day so that if her scenes took longer, we weren't stressing her. And we had the perfect day and she was wonderful. So it's planning ahead was one of them. Another one, this was interesting. This was actually the same project. Because it had to keep raising money, it took us 2.5 years. 2.5 years to do it because they raised money for a couple of days, have to raise money for another couple of days. So it was keeping your mind in the project when so many things had happened and so many rewrites. And just having a great crew around you. It was amazing to put all these pieces together. So the challenge was, there's a scene, for example, a scene in the hallway where two men are trying to escape a nursing home. And then somebody has to come from another angle and somebody has to come from another angle. So it was almost like a puzzle piece, making sure that people didn't cross over. And it was so gratifying just to see when it finally came out how good it worked. But because it took so long to film it, there was the last day of filming, one of the main actresses had one day she can do in the entire summer because she was on a television series. And so it was like, so we had to recast 3 roles very quickly because she was already in it. We couldn't recast her. We had to have her. But what I did was, because I know a lot of people, I called Lou Martini Jr. and I said, Lou, we have this role, and he looks at that, I'm in. And he was so wonderful in this very comedic character. And I brought in a couple of other people, but it was like we didn't have time to go through full casting. But because I know people, it's like I text, hey, you available? They're there. And we were able to really pull that off. That was pretty wild. There's always something. And then there was one film shoot where the sound person we were using told me half an hour before we were supposed to wrap that the sound card hadn't worked. And that was probably the worst thing that ever happened because it was a very hard to find location. And deep breathing, lots of deep breathing. Just no, this cannot happen. And we ended up having to do ADR, but the
I was going to
actors
say ADR probably, right?
yeah, and we got it done. And, we'll see how it turns out. But the actors were great. We got done early in the day because they really got, to know the role. So that was pretty cool. But that was pretty like my life is over.
Interesting situation until a win. So good for you. All right. Well, listen, Deborah, let's tell everybody again where they can watch Waitlist, The Love-ish Story, and where they can find you.
Okay, well, Waitlist, The Love-ish Story is on Tubi, so it's for free. So definitely watch it all the way through. Leave it on when you're cleaning. Do whatever you got to do. It's a rom-com. It's a sexy film. It's a fun film. So Tubi, and it's Waitlist, A Love-ish Story. It is also on Google Play and I don't know if you pay for that or not because I don't have it, but it's also on Prime Video, which you do have to pay for, but Tubi you do not. It's free to get the app. So definitely do that. They can go to my website, intentionfilmsandmedia.com, and if you go to the drop-down menu of Explore Our Film, they'll give you the links right to all those sites. And there's also a contact me form, but probably the best way to find out what I'm doing or when I'm casting or when I need crew or whatever is my Instagram, which is at Debra Markowitz. So DebraMarkowitz. So at Debra Markowitz Film on Instagram. And they can find pictures of my dog, walks in the morning, all my film jobs, my podcast, everything is on there.
That's fantastic. And again, those that are watching, you can also find those links. We'll make sure we include them in the description box below of this video. Make sure you are leaving reviews for these movies. Very important when you're watching this, whatever platform you're watching on. Make sure you're leaving reviews. It means a lot. And please make sure you're following Deborah on all her socials, and make sure you're following me. Subscribe to me on here, please. And I'm also on social media under Inside Hollywood with Vinny from South Philly, blah. But Deborah, you've been a great and wonderful guest. I, again, encourage everyone to make sure to check out all of your wonderful films, especially Waitlist, A Love-ish Story, which I want to watch myself tonight, I think. It sounds like something right up my alley. And
thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure again.
Vinny Writes Rock.
I'm sorry?
And Vinny Writes Rock. That's the
yes.
distribution company.
Excellent. And shout out to Tony Vitale. Seen you with the Roosevelt Island Film Festival. We had her on our show before, so shout out to Tony Vitale. But anyway, our guest tonight has been the wonderful writer, director, filmmaker, Debra Markowitz of Waitlist, A Love-ish Story. Thank you, Indy Rice, for having us have this wonderful guest on. And any last words for the guests out there, Debra?
No, that's it. I'm excited to get stuff out there. We're shooting something in a few weeks, which we're excited about. We have a podcast called The Best of Intentions. So if anybody wants to hear some of my guests, that's all on my YouTube channel. Debra Markowitz is my YouTube channel. No, that's it. It was great. Thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
The pleasure's all mine. Again, my guest has been the wonderful Debra Markowitz. We'll see you again real soon. Thanks for watching.